Okay, what are we covering today? Okay, we are going to do natural selection. How many of you have already heard of natural selection? Only one? Okay, I'm sure JH you learn. Those who came from secondary school, you have heard of it also, right? Have. Okay, so it's not new. But under natural selection, I think there will be a bit more details and a bit more integration with genetics, okay, when you do it at the JC level. Okay, so you can look at the learning objectives. This is the first part of evolution. There is a second part, okay, which will be done probably, I think, only after your promos. Okay, for this part, E, you have already covered before. Is it very loud? Is that better? Okay. Okay, you have already covered the first part before, which is on variation. So you know you have genetic variation as a result of mutation, meiosis, and random mating during sexual reproduction. Okay, and how is that important for natural selection? Okay, so you're going to look at that, and then I have to give you a few examples. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few examples of how we have observed natural selection in the real world, and then what is the role of natural selection in evolution. Okay, so you need to know what evolution is. How do we define evolution? Okay, so later when you learn in greater detail, you'll learn about microevolution and macroevolution. So micro means at a smaller level, so you're just looking maybe at a population. Okay, so when you see that there are changes in the gene pool or the allele frequencies, okay, in the gene pool, that is microevolution. Okay, macroevolution is this idea that humans diverge from apes, apes from mammals, mammals from other organisms, all the way down to fish. Okay, started off from fishes. Okay, so you will see there. Then, why is population the smallest unit that can evolve? And why is it that individuals like you and me cannot evolve? Okay, why is it a population is the one that we say can evolve? Alright? Okay, and then the last one is about how genetic variation is preserved in a natural population. So as you listen to me, you will see that with natural selection, certain traits are selected for, others are selected against. So why is it that the traits that are selected against don't completely disappear? Yet, when they are coded for by a recessive allele, right, these alleles actually remain in the population. Okay, so why? Okay. Okay, preview you can read. Okay. If you go to the first part. Okay, I will not be following the learning objectives in order, so it will not be A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, so I feel doing this first will give you a better idea of what the bigger picture is. Okay, so okay, where did natural selection theory come? Who did it come from? From Charles Darwin. You've heard of Charles Darwin, right? Have you heard of Alfred Wallace? Have some of you have. Okay, in previous years when we used to ask people if you know who Alfred Wallace is, a lot of people don't know. Okay, what is the reason? The reason is because Charles Darwin was, he worked with the Galapagos Islands, that archipelago, which is the series of islands. Alfred Wallace worked in Southeast Asia. Okay, so he was working along the Malayan Islands. Okay, he actually spent a lot of time in Singapore. Okay, observing a lot of the plant species and so on. So how did the story go? So the story went that Charles Darwin, right, was the first one to make all these observations. But at that point in time, there were a lot of religious standpoints as to how life forms came about. Okay, so he didn't want to rock the boat, so he said, okay, I will wait. Okay, I will wait and gather a lot more evidence. Then when I feel I'm brave enough, right, I will publish this new theory. Okay? So if you notice all the observations, right, you can't actually do a one-off scientific experiment in order to come up with natural selection theory. It is just observations of what exists in nature to kind of postulate the theory of natural selection. Okay, so what he did was he just sat down there waiting. Alfred Wallace was his junior. Okay, so Alfred Wallace did the same kind of studies he observed. He came up with the same theory, and then he wrote a preliminary report and he sent it to Charles Darwin. Then when Charles Darwin saw that, he panicked. Okay, so he panicked because what if Alfred Wallace publishes it first? Okay, but luckily they were not so bad to each other lah. So they worked together and they published their theory together about natural selection. But a year later, was it a year later? No, I think so. A year or a few years later, right? Charles Darwin published another book called Origin of Species with a lot more information. Okay, so he actually rose to fame. And then nobody remembers Alfred Wallace. Okay, so it's very sad. Okay, so this is about practices of science, about scientists and all that, just for you to know a bit more about history. Okay, so if you're planning to become a scientist, then one, act quickly. Okay, don't sit down and wait because you don't know who's going to publish what first. Okay, and you need to have quality research for people to take your work seriously. Okay, so all this happened right before they had any knowledge of genes or DNA. Okay, so if you follow the time, the structure of DNA was only discovered in 1953, almost close to 100 years later. Alright, so at that point in time, right, when the two of them published their theory of natural selection, they used very vague terms like passed down inherited traits. Okay, they don't know what this trait is coded by. Okay, but now you know it is by the DNA, the genes, and that you have different alleles coding for different traits. Okay, so when we discuss from here on, right, we will talk about natural selection theories, and whenever you see this word neo-Darwinism, right, neo means new. Okay, so neo-Darwinism just incorporates theory of evolution together with concepts of modern population genetics. Okay, whatever Mendel found out okay, about genetics with his pea plants. Okay, just wondering, y'all did nucleic acid, right, and expression. So you have learned about Watson and Crick. Did y'all hear about Rosalind Franklin? You did. Okay, so you discussed her. Okay, it's quite interesting. That was quite sad also. Okay, if you're interested, you should go and read it. Okay, all the definitions are there. Okay, so what is natural selection? It is a process where you have organisms with certain inherited traits that tend to survive in an environment and reproduce at higher rates compared to other organisms. Okay, so what it says is that you have a population of organisms and they have different traits. Okay, and some, based on how well they adapt to the environment, can survive better. Okay, so if they survive better, that means they will survive to maturity. They should be able to reproduce and pass down these traits to their offspring. That's the idea. Okay, so over time, you will see more of individuals with that kind of traits compared to the other trait. Alright? Okay, so neo-Darwinism, as I've mentioned, you just include the terms genes, alleles, etc. Phenotype, genotype. Okay. This is the definition for evolution. Okay, so you might be asked to talk about natural selection and how it leads to evolution. So you must describe the process of natural selection, and then at the end you have to state that it has led to blah blah blah, which is evolution. Okay, so this definition needs to come in. Okay, this is how you answer a question. Okay, so what is evolution? It is the change in allele frequencies in the population over time. Okay, what are allele frequencies? Okay, so this picture is just for your reference to understand what is allele frequency. So if I define my alleles as CR, okay, it can be simpler than this lah. So if it is a very straightforward, only two phenotype, then it's quite simple. But this one is a bit complicated because you have three phenotypes. Where the if you have CR is red. if you have CW, CW is white. If you have one of each, it's actually like a co-dominant thing where it's a pink color flower. But it doesn't matter. The idea is just that the alleles are CR and CW. Okay, so what are allele frequencies? Allele frequency is just the proportion of the alleles in the entire gene pool. Okay? Okay, so whenever we refer to allele frequencies, this is what we are referring to. So if you notice, from generation 1 to generation 2, the frequency of allele P has decreased and the frequency of allele Q has increased. Okay? Nothing for you to understand here. I'm just trying to bring in the concept of allele frequency. That's all. Okay? Okay. If you're ready, we are moving to the process of natural selection. Okay, so when Charles Darwin was sitting there observing the many different organisms, what he thought was, I noticed all these organisms, the individuals, and every population, right, actually has the capability of producing a large number of offspring. Okay, so that's the first thing, overproduction of offspring. But he also observed that though they actually have the ability to produce large numbers of offspring, you don't actually see an exponential increase in the population. Okay, so there's actually a constancy of numbers. Okay, so what he postulated was that why is there a constancy of numbers, or why is the population stable? It's actually because there's a struggle for survival. Okay, because resources are limited. Okay, and individuals actually need to compete for these resources. Which means that that's the reason why you will not have exponential growth in population. There will be a constancy of numbers. Because certain individuals will be able to survive better, they will get the resources, and then they will be able to survive to maturity and pass on their traits to the offspring, whereas others, they might die before reproductive age. Okay. So, what else did he postulate? Okay, it was the idea that he noticed that there is variation within population. Okay, so when you observe a certain population, right, the individuals are not clones of each other. They actually have certain differences. Okay, so that's where this idea came about, that variation provides the raw material for natural selection to act on. And the variation can be because of these few things. Usually it's genetic, and when you have genetic variation, it gives rise to morphological, how the species looks, that's phenotype. It could be biochemical or physiological. So what happens within the body, the enzymatic processes or whatever. Alright? Okay. And the other very important thing is that it is not that there's a change in the environment and therefore the species mutate to become better adapted. Okay? The variation already exists. These variations arise spontaneously and they already exist in the population. Okay? So this is an important point to take note of. And because of that, you will have survival of the fittest by natural selection. So there will be a certain selection pressure. Okay, so this selection pressure could be a predator. So it's here. Okay, it could be a predator. It could be a food source. Could be, I don't know, the niche, the habitat that they live in. Okay, so different kind of selection pressure, and what that will do is it will result in some individuals being at a selective advantage. Okay, because they have favorable alleles that give them confer a certain phenotype. Okay, that gives them a selective advantage, whereas others might have unfavorable alleles that confer phenotype that does not put them at a selective advantage, so they are at a selective disadvantage. Okay, and as a result, right, you will have differential reproductive success. Okay, another thing I need to let you know, whenever you are talking about natural selection and we talk about survival of the fittest, we are not talking about physical fitness. Okay, not who's muscular and who's not. Okay, we are talking about biological fitness, and biological fitness is the idea that how many offspring do you have. So if we compare biological fitness, all of you, I hope, in this LT have 0 biological fitness. I have 1 lah. Okay? Because I have a child. Okay? So that's how you look at biological fitness. Okay? Okay. Okay, so because of the selective advantage that some individuals have, they have differential reproductive success. And then we go to the next one, which is like produces like. Okay, so if you have certain traits or phenotypes, you will pass on these genes and alleles to your offspring, and they will have the similar traits as the parents. Okay, so when these individuals mature and they reproduce, they will produce offspring similar to themselves. Okay, so over time, you will actually have, you are actually passing down the favorable alleles, okay, to the offspring. Can? Okay, I think it's quite clear so far. Whatever I've underlined are the key terms that you need to use. So if you need to describe this process, right, you need to use these key terms. Okay? Is this, okay, formation of a new species over a long period of time. Okay, so what happens is, because of this differential reproductive success, over time, the proportion of individuals with advantageous traits will increase, and those lacking these traits will decrease. Okay, and over time, with usually when we talk about evolution, we're not just looking at one trait. You actually have many traits that are changing over time. All right, so over many thousands of years, right, you might actually have a new species forming. Okay, but for the new species to form, there are a few other processes that have to happen, where you have to have lack of gene flow and things like that. But this you will cover in the next part of evolution. Okay, so you just keep in view. Okay. Okay, do you know how to tell how two things are considered different species? When are two organisms considered different species? Where's my picture? Oh, okay. Cute, right? Okay. Okay. These two ducks and these two spiders, are they the same species? Yes, how you tell? One spider so big, one spider so small. Do you know what spider there is now? No. Joseph, you know. What's that? Yes, that's the black widow there too. Okay, so the big one, that's the black widow. The bigger one is the female. The smaller one is the male. Okay, this is the poor species where the female will eat the male after mating already. Okay, so sad. Okay, how do you know there are different? Okay, if I give you two individuals and I ask you whether they are the same species, what do you look up for? How might you try to tell if they are the same species? How are you going to tell whether they are the same species? Huh? I have to call name already. Who can I call? Can't remember anybody. Devin. Okay, how will you tell if I give you two individuals whether they are the same species? You have a joke to share with me? No, nothing. You'll find something very funny. Okay, yes, how do you tell? You don't know. How about the simplest thing? Would you look to see whether they look similar? Features. Okay, usually it's the morphological features. Okay, so that's what they used to do initially. Is to look at the morphological features, and usually you can tell. If you look at the morphological features of organisms, they're roughly about the same, which is why I choose these pictures for you. Okay, because at least for the spider, it looks a bit different. So if it looks different like this, and you didn't know it was a black widow, you might not know whether they are the same species. Okay, so for our syllabus at this level, right, how do we tell whether they are the same species? We let them mate. Okay? If two individuals can mate and produce viable, fertile offspring, right, then they are the same species. What is viable? Viable means the offspring must survive. Okay? Fertile means the offspring must be able to have its own offspring. Okay, so there's a difference. So whenever we ask you, how do I know whether two organisms are the same species? If you meet them, they must be able to produce viable, fertile offspring. Okay? This is the definition for, is the biological definition of species. Okay? Okay. Now back to this. Okay, what you see below, this one is the exact same thing I've gone through from points 1 to 7, but I've summarized it. Okay, so this is the template, right, you can use for an essay question or a structured question. Okay, so if they ask you how does natural selection lead to evolution, you will use this. Okay, but you need to tweak according to the context. Okay, so for example, if it was about the picture below, which is about a predator being a bird that is eating beetles from the tree bark. Okay, it looks grey color, but it's supposed to be a tree bark. Okay, so imagine it brown. Okay. Okay, so you will probably need to change things like because of the environmental factor, which is the predation by the bird, which will exert a selective pressure. And since there is genetic variation, so there are actually alleles coding for brown color, brown body color, and allele coding for green body color, maybe. And there will be phenotypic variation among the population, therefore you see brown colored and green colored individuals. Okay, then organisms with alleles that enable them to better serve the environment. So for the next 45, we'll say organisms, so the green color ones, no, the brown color ones are better suited to the environment because they can be better camouflaged against the tree bark. Okay, so they are the selective advantage. Whereas the green colored individuals are not. Okay, so they are preyed upon. And because of the higher reproductive success, the allele frequencies of the allele that is coding for the green colored body, the frequency of that allele will increase. Okay, so you follow through that. So you just need to adapt to that context. Okay, another thing I want to mention to you here is for you to notice that, okay, this is only very few generations lah, but in reality there's actually quite a number of generations, but you will never or rarely do you have a context where you will only have, where you can get rid of all the green color beetles. There will always be a few individuals of the green color there. Okay, the reason for this is after a certain period of time, right, you have something called frequency dependent selection that will kick in. Okay, what is frequency dependent selection? I will cover in greater detail later, but briefly is the idea that when you reach a point where you have a lot of brown beetles and 2 or 3 individuals of green beetles, right, by chance, when a bird comes by, right, it's more likely that at a point in time, it's going to find a brown beetle rather than a green beetle. Okay, so that's the idea of frequency-dependent selection. So when the frequency of a certain allele or a trait increases so much, right, you're going to have more of those individuals who might be preyed upon. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, let's look at the 3 modes of selection that you need to be aware of. Okay, so the 3 are directional, destructive, and stabilizing. Okay, and you need to know examples for each. Okay, so they might ask you to describe an example of directional selection using an example. Okay, so for directional selection, the one that we're going to look at is the peppered moth. Okay, have you all done the peppered moth before? Have No, the industrial melanism? Okay, some have, some haven't. Okay. The example is going to come in greater detail later, but briefly, it's the idea that in England, before the industrialization era, the trees and the environment was very clean. Okay, therefore the light-coloured moth that existed there. So you have 2 variants really, the light-coloured and the black-coloured one. Okay, the black-coloured one is called the melanic moth. Okay, so the light-coloured one was better camouflage, so it escaped predation. So you have higher frequency of the lighter-coloured ones. Then after industrialization, when you have a lot of soot in the environment, where everything was covered in soot, it was very dark, therefore the melanic moth was better camouflage. Okay, so because of the change in the environment, right, the environment or it selected, so that selection pressure selected for the melanic moth. Okay, so their frequency increased in the population. Okay, so why is this directional? This is directional because the selection pressure is against individual at one end and it favors individual at the other end. Alright, so here is usually because the environment changes in one direction. Okay? Okay, so it's this one. Okay, so you notice that usually when we look at the population graphs, they are bell-shaped graphs. Okay, and here because of the change from the lighter to the darker environment, the darker melanic moths are favoured, and therefore you see that the population, there's a shift to the right. Okay? So directional selection. Okay, quite simple, right? I believe you're following. Okay, let's look at destructive selection. Destructive selection, the example here is snails. So again, there's a change in the environment. So originally, it just had, the rocks were a certain color, and then the change in the environment to have darker and lighter rocks means that the snails with pale shells can camouflage against the lighter colored rocks, and those with darker shells can camouflage against the darker colored rocks, whereas those that are in the intermediate, right, they cannot, in a sense that they cannot fit there, cannot fit here also. Okay, so they cannot camouflage well against either environment. Okay, so basically this one is where individuals in the middle range are selected against, and it favors the individuals in either end. Okay, so what this will do is this will break up the population into 2 distinct subgroups. Okay, so your nice bell-shaped graph that is here, right, will become like this. Okay, where it looks like 2 camel humps. Okay, this kind of selection has the ability over time, right, to lead to speciation. Okay, especially if these 2 subpopulations are able to interbreed, then they will still remain as one species. But if over time there is some disruption and they cannot interbreed, right, over time they will become more and more different. And then when after a certain period of time you try to interbreed them, you realize that you cannot produce a viable species anymore. So they would have become different species. Okay, you will learn more about this later, how they become different species. Okay? Okay, so that is this disruptive. Okay, the last one, okay, is stabilizing. Okay, stabilizing, this one is about the mortality of newborn babies. So generally, the healthy birth rate is around 3 to 4 kg. Okay, so in babies who are very light or very heavy, right, they actually suffer medical complications, and therefore the mortality is not very high. So in this instance, the selection pressure is against individual at either end. Okay, those that are very light or those that are very heavy. Okay, and individuals in the middle range are selected for. Okay, so it's stabilizing. So it will remain. This is favored lah. Okay. So for this one, it actually maintains phenotypic stability in the population over time, and usually does not promote evolutionary change, okay? Because it just remains there. Okay? It will still be a bell-shaped curve. Okay? Okay. If that's okay, I'm going to briefly run through this part, which you should be familiar with already, and then maybe cover one example. Okay, earlier on we went through the process of natural selection. So when you went through the process of natural selection, you know that for you to begin, or for you to even select anything, there needs to be variation. Okay, if there's no variation, then you have nothing to select, right? Everybody is the same. Okay, so even if you by chance select something, it will still be the same. Okay, or you can also phrase it to say that natural selection will have no effect. Okay, because it's the same. So why is variation important? So it is important because that is what natural selection acts on. Okay, so it acts on the phenotypic variation, which arises due to the genotypic variation. Okay, and this genotypic variation is as a result of genetic variation. Okay, which are due to the factors that you are already aware of: mutation, meiosis, and sexual reproduction. Okay, so this is what I described to you. No variation, natural selection has no effect. Okay, where are they? They are here. Okay, so these are the sources. New alleles and new combination of alleles are two different things. I think you're already aware by now. Mutation is the only process that gives you new alleles. Okay, so as in a population, over time you will always have individuals that acquire spontaneous or random mutations, and therefore they will express certain things that are a bit different, and you will have genetic and therefore genotypic and therefore phenotypic variation, okay, for natural selection to act on. Okay, then meiosis. Okay, for meiosis, right, this one, not new alleles, but new combination of already existing alleles. Okay, so when you have crossing over during prophase of meiosis 1, okay, you will have exchange and new combination of alleles, and then independent assortment of the chromosomes into your corresponding gametes. Okay, so these are the processes that give rise to new combination of alleles. Okay, for the last one, this is the idea that when you have the process of fusion of gametes, you can have any sperm or any egg that is going to fuse to give rise to an individual. Okay, so if you're talking about a human, it's the idea that any sperm could be one of 223 combinations, and that any egg could be one of 223 combinations. Okay, so you actually have that many different combinations or possibilities. Okay, so there is variation that comes from that. Okay? Okay. So if you're asked what are the sources of variation for natural selection to act on, this is what you will use to answer. Okay? No. Okay, can I just cover the example of the melanic morph, then I will let you go. Okay, so we are going to look at the example. Okay, the first one is industrial melanism. Okay, what is melanism? Melanism is the idea that whatever change you're looking at favors darker colored forms of organisms. Okay, so over time you have a higher proportion of darker colored forms of individuals. Okay? Okay, so as I already told you, there were already two forms, the lighter and the melanic form. And the melanic form was thought to have arisen from the lighter form due to a certain spontaneous mutation. Okay? Then, prior to the Industrial Revolution, right, the air was very clean, everything was very clean, and the trees, right, had a lot of lichens on them. Okay, lichen, lichen, I don't know how you pronounce it. Okay, either one. Okay, so lichens are white color. Okay, so basically the tree bark, right, was covered with that. So if you need a real life picture, it was like this. Okay, before Industrial Revolution, it was like that, covered with lichens. Then when there was a lot of pollution in the air and a lot of soot covering the barks, lichens are very sensitive to environmental factors. Okay, so if the air is not very clean, right, they will die. Okay, so when there was pollution, right, the lichens basically died off, and you actually have the tree bark that was like that, and then it was covered with soot, so it was actually very dark. Okay, so the idea was before Industrial Revolution, the lighter form, okay, was more abundant because they were better camouflaged from the predators, and they were at a selective advantage, whereas the melanic moths were at a selective disadvantage. Okay? Then after Industrial Revolution, when the lichens were killed off, okay, the lighter forms were selected against because they were more obvious against a dark tree bark, whereas the melanic form was better camouflaged and selected for. Okay, so over time, the allele for the melanic form became more frequent in the population. Okay, so that's the idea. That's it. Okay. Okay. This is a real picture. If you want to see how it looked like. Okay, this was the one when it was lichen, and this one was when it was dark coloured. I don't know whether you can see the white colour morph here. Can you see the white colour morph? Still can see, right, but not very obvious. So the melanic one is here, the lighter morph is here. Okay, so there. Can see, no, it's here. This one. It's there. Okay. Okay, so this one I think is a bit more obvious. The black morph is still here, but not as obvious as the white one. Okay, I will stop here. Then when you come back in term 4, we will continue with the next few examples. Okay, but since you have the notes, you can read up. Okay, if you're interested. Okay, thank you.